specimens to have. So this is going to be it. So on here, the major vessels are bolded, and the regular type is for the other ones that come off, and then we've got beyond that, we've got ones that are not really visible but vaguely of interest, and so they're on there, but they're in italics and little brackets around them, so it means you can't see them, but we'll kind of mention them as we go. So the aorta has several regions to it. This little part is the ascending aorta. Then here's the aortic arch, which is a rather prominent place that's going to end up supplying all of the upper body mostly. Then the descending aorta is really divided into the thoracic aorta, which is still supplying upper body in the center of the thoracic region, and then the abdominal aorta, which is going through here. Then the aorta ends and divides and is no longer the aorta. So, looking at it as we go, the ascending aorta then is this first little bit here. I suppose I could try to ask that, but that just seems a little awkward. I mean, if I was going to do that, I'd probably ask for the aortic arch up here, because that's a little easier to be clear on. I'll try to put the vessels kind of in the middle of their area. So, you can't see it on the model, but the first branches off the aortic arch would be, off the ascending aorta, would be the coronary artery. It's really the only branches off the ascending aorta. So sometimes the question comes up of what's the first branch off the aorta, and the first branches would be the coronary, even though they're the last to get the blood actually supplied to them, as we recall, hopefully. So then we get the aortic arch here. We've got two arms and two sides of the neck, so in a way we'd need four vessels. We've got the carotid arteries that are going to go up to the head, and we've got the subclavian arteries that are eventually going to go around and primarily supply the arms, but also some of the upper region. So on the right-hand side, and it's important on the test to put left and right, because, well, unless it doesn't have it, like aortic arch wouldn't have a left or right, but most of them are paired vessels, and so you'd have to put an L or an R. You'd also have to put A or B, whether it's an artery or a vein. So this is a little bit to remember. So kind of like it's written here. So here are the carotid arteries coming up to the head, and here are the subclavian arteries coming around. So on the right-hand side, it initially comes off. There's only three little branches off the aortic arch, or fairly big ones, and so on the right-hand side, the two come off together briefly for a vessel called the brachiocephalic trunk, or brachiocephalic artery is also fine. The word trunk, which actually isn't even used on here, the word trunk, and we'll see that a few times, refers to when we get a vessel that's coming off, and then it really isn't going to supply anything other than dividing into other vessels. So like the pulmonary trunk. The pulmonary trunk comes off and then divides quickly into the left and right pulmonary arteries. So here's a brachiocephalic trunk or brachiocephalic artery. It's pretty hard to stick a label on because it goes underneath there, but there's where it is. So we could also, you can see it on the heart model. It's the first branch off the top of the aortic arch. So it divides then into the right common carotid artery and the right subclavian artery. So on this right-hand side, that's about as far as we can see. The common carotid artery goes up here, and then it just kind of got chopped off, so that's it. The carotid artery would divide into the external and internal carotid arteries, and the internal supplies the brain and goes through the carotid canal, and the external carotid artery supplies the face and the rest of the head. So, and that's the one we talked about in lecture with the carotid sinus. We can't see any of that on here, so this is the common carotid artery. Common meaning that it's common to the two branches it's going to have later, so common carotid artery. The right subclavian artery comes around here. So subclavian because it goes under the clavicle, so subclavian artery, and then it's going to go through a few name changes as it goes down, just because they can. So the subclavian artery